Hello everyone, myself Dr. Radhika Mehta, Associate Professor from Jagannath University, Jaipur. Let's start the new topic for today, chronological style of writing. We'll be discussing Unit 10 of print journalism, that is chronological style of writing. Now, chronological format is widely used for narrating or writing stories, real or fictitious. The entire sequence of events is presented in order of their occurrence. The result is that the most important information may be places anywhere in the narration according to the fact when it occurred. This format is mainly used either to create documentary evidence of the actions or events, as in recording of evidence in courts, or when the purpose is to entertain and the climax is brought forward in the end. Generally, in a feature film, the peak of the story is at the end, and events are projected in a chronological order, maybe sometimes in a flashback. Stories told by grandparents also follow the order of occurrence, and suspense is delayed till the end. Now let's understand the example of chronological format. It was a cold day and there was a dense fog all around. Visibility was very poor. A Maruti car was coming from Chandigarh. It was being driven by Ashok Kumar. The owner of the car, Mr. S.C. Mehra, his wife and two children were in the car. At 3 in the evening, they had crossed Panipat and were driving at the speed of 70 km per hour. Another truck had started from Ghaziabad at about 12 noon. Mr. Sher Singh was driving and Mr. Parvez was assisting. The truck crossed Murthal at about 3 in the evening. The truck was carrying electronic toys to Amritsar. After about 15 kilometers from Panipat, when the fog was very dense, the car of Mr. Mehra was, and the truck driven by Mr. Sher Singh came opposite to each other, and neither could see the other vehicles collided with each other. There was a big bang noise and the car turned upside down. The truck also turned upside down. Mr. Pervez could come out of the truck and he first looked at his friend and Mr. Sher Singh, who was lying unconscious, and Parvez thought that he was dead and started crying loudly. Hearing his cries, some farmers working in the nearby fields rushed to scene and found two vehicles damaged heavily. Some of the rescuers went to the car and dragged out four persons after bringing the car on its wheels. Soon, the ambulance came and the paramedical staff stated giving first aid to the injured. They found that both the drivers and Mr. Mehra, who was sitting in the front seat, were dead, and Mrs. Mehra was profusely bleeding. Two children had received minor injuries. The police also arrived. Photographs of the damaged vehicles were taken and statements of some persons were recorded. Injured and dead were taken to the nearby hospital in Panipat. The damaged vehicles are still there. Later, it was learned that Mrs. Mehra was out of danger and both children were also safe. Now let's start the new topic, headlines. A headline grabs the reader's attention targets him or her by saying something meaningful and creates some curiosity in the reader. It can make a promise for some big benefit. It can make an offer. It can challenge the reader in some way. It can introduce some really compelling concept or idea, or it can be something newsworthy. A headline is a window of the news stories. Thus, a heading must fit, must tell the story, must conform to newspapers' standard, must not just a label, must be safe and must not commit the paper to an opinion. A good headline is one that, in less than a dozen of words, summarizes what a reporter has said. The earliest newspapers had no headlines on the front page, which was devoted entirely to advertisements, and the headlines inside did no more than announce the subject of the report. Today, every newspaper has its own style of headlining a story. Some newspapers give straight hard headings, while some other prefer to give exciting and sensational headings. It normally depends on the policy of the newspaper. It has found that all daily newspapers in standard size generally prefer to give straight headlines, and tabloid newspaper throughout the world give sensational headlines. Now, four functions of a headline. It gets the reader's attention. It summarizes or tells about the article. It helps organize the news on the page. It indicates the relative importance of a story. A good headline should be accurate, clear, grammatically correct, strong, active, fresh, and immediate. It should catch the reader's attention. The two basic rules of headlines. First of all, a headline must be accurate. Second, they must fit the available space. For headlines to be accurate, the headline writer must understand the article thoroughly before writing the headline. The copy editor who doesn't have a good view of what the article says is not likely to write a headline that communicates clearly and accurately. Now, the accuracy tips. First of all, spell check after writing the display type. Second, in particular, double check any proper names or any numbers. The headline should sell the article to the reader. Tell readers why they should be interested. Next, every news story headline should have an active verb. Headlines on feature stories can be more creative, but aim for complete thoughts. Tell the story, but avoid the clear huddle or Mandi's phenomena. Get the most important element first. The least important head, least element last. Attribute heads that convey opinion. If the lead needs attribution, chances of are the headline will too. Most times attribution will go at the end of the headline. Headlines should be accurate in tone. Match the tone of the story. Be original and creative. but not to try and glitch. If you do employ word play on an idiom or common phrase, be sure the meter is exactly the same. That means the matter has to be the same. The headline will ring falsely otherwise. If you use a punk, be honest with yourself. Will it make the reader smile or sad? Don't repeat the lead in the headline. Write a better headline than the lead. And don't give away the punchline of a feature story that has a surprise ending. So we have understood the basics of headline. Now we will start with the types of headlines. When we talk about the types of headlines, they are mainly divided on the basis of its content and on the basis of its appearance. So first we'll be starting on the basis of the content. So, depending upon the content, headlines have been divided into three main groups. They are label headlines, active headlines, and impressionist headlines. First, label headlines. When the headline just indicate the class or the type of the event that is described in the news is called label headline. For example, in Parliament today, city notes, obituary, radio programs, UNO decisions, Supreme Court today. Label headlines are generally used for regular columns and for reference news. Writing a label headlines for any news story tends to kill the story and stifle the reader's potential interest in it. When the First World War ended, the Times of India's headline was about talking about how the blast and how it created a problem. So, when we talk about the First World War, it was majorly talking about how people were dealing with it, how that problem was taken care, and how everybody was facing the challenges. Now let's understand active headlines. These headlines are informative, get to main point of the story, and usually contain an active verb. They are considered to be the ideal headlines, and all newspapers should learn to write active headlines. Active headlines are possible for all types of news stories, including the fillers. Example, IAF airlifts stranded passengers, youth commits suicide, rupees 5.75 lakh looted, Sohab fined with two others, Acharya gets bail, security in Ahmedabad is a concern. Park. BJP changes strategy in Bihar. Now let's understand impressionist headlines. Some headlines are used not so much to transfer information but to convey the mood. For example, tension in Meerut. India does it again. Terror in South Delhi. It was not so funny. Kashmir chills, Shimla perspires. Now let's understand headlines on the basis of its appearance. Depending upon the structure and arrangements, headlines can be of many types. Some are described below with examples. The first one, single line or cross line headline. One line headline that may spread across one or more columns. The headline may touch the extreme left and right of the news story. or it may be placed in the middle of the story. Most headlines are of this type, which can be on left, it can be on right, or it can be between both the columns, which is also known as centralized. When you take a look on the appearance of it, you can see, as it is mentioned, single line. It is like a centralized one which is in the center of the column. We can have a single line like flush left, which is on the left side of the column, or it can be on the right side of the column. Now let's understand the second one. Two line or double cross line headline. Headline is long and is adjusted in two lines. Normally, such headlines are used for stories of more than one column width. Three options are available. Both the lines can touch the extreme left and right of the story, or both can be centralized and one can be on the left and other centralized. Normally, upper line is flush and second line is centralized. Now, take a look on this example. First of all, it's a two-line headline, which can be somewhere, one can be on extreme right, other can be on extreme left, or it can be, one can be on extreme right and the other can be on extreme left. So this is a two-line headline, which is also known as double cross line headline. Now let's understand the next one, which is known as inverted pyramid headline. There are more than two lines in this headline, and if we talk about the width of it, it is more vertical and narrow in comparison with the other headlines, therefore forming an inverted pyramid. Generally, there are three lines in this type of headline. Rarely there can be four, but never more than four. Such headlines are given to important stories with many important points. Such stories are with many columns wide. So when you take a look, it is more or less like it is in an inverted pyramid format, which can consist of many lines, of course, not more than four. And they get narrow like this, and then it get vertex down. Heading towards the next one, drop line headline. This type of headline has two or more three lines and arrangements of lines look like a staircase. The top line is flush left, second line begins a little bit away from the extreme left and ends a little after the first line. The third line begins from a little towards left from where the second line has started and ends more towards right than the second line. Taking the example, it looks like a staircase and which is like dropping, as you see. The first line is smaller and gradually they enter with a larger line. Next, inverted stairway headline. This is just opposite of the drop line headline. That means we have an inverted stairway where you see the first is longer line than the second one. Now next is hanging headline. In this case, all the headlines of the headline are flushed either on left or right. First line takes the entire width of the news, but rests of the lines can take variable width. Example, it hangs like this. Next, rectangle and square indentation. Using 3 to 4 lines, headlines, and arranging them in a rectangular or square format is wisely used in many newspapers in America and Europe. Next, waistline headline. Both the top and bottom lines are white and equal, but the central line is narrow and small. Next, skeleton headline. In some cases, just above the main headline, a minor headline is added in smaller case with a rule line under it. Next, banner headline. Whenever there is an extraordinarily big news, entire width of the newspaper is used to splash it in big and bold type. Similarly, tsunamis, disasters, news was also splashed across the front page of newspaper for 2 to 3 days. That's all for today. Thank you everyone.